little monsters, this little monster girl Desi coming at ya. And today I got a brand new monster bite for you guys. Though, to some of you, I guess the little people with butterfly wings aren't exactly something you'd classify as monster. But trust me, after I tell you what I know about them, you might just change your mind. For once, we actually agree on something. So with that being said, let's get on to the video. Hey, that's my line! For a really long time, people have told stories of the Fae. But all these myths and stories don't have one single origin, and are actually a huge collectional belief, stemming from Celtic, German, and English folklore. And while a lot of people may think that the word Fae directly means fairy, and in some cases does, is often more used as a catch-all blanket term for European folklore creatures. Though today I'll be talking specifically about fairies. I'm sure a lot of us have grown up with fairy tales. Stories of brave heroes going off on adventures and having a fairy help them along. And I'm guessing some of you may think that I'm talking about Zelda. But in actuality, a lot of times in a lot of old stories, fairies have been known to be more of, well, tricksters. And in other stories, there are actually warnings about fairies as well. In some old stories, it's said that fairies will lead travelers astray. And in others, they'll even lead them down to the fairy realm. But since the realm of the fairies works a lot differently than our world, even if a person manages to leave, it can be years, even decades since they first entered, since time seems to flow a lot differently there. In other stories, it's actually been known that fairies particularly love children, especially with stories about creatures like the changelings. But I think I'll leave that to another monster bite to explain. With all the research I've done, it definitely seems that a lot of fairies really love humans, even if they can be a general pain in the butt to deal with. But at the same time, it definitely seems that fairies are just really ignorant to how humans work. And sometimes when granting wishes, they'll take it really literally, which can cause a lot of trouble too. I've also found there are a lot of different ways to ward off fairies or distract them. One of the most common ways to ward off fairies is actually iron, and I have a whole theory on how that works. To be honest, I think fairy magic and iron just have a really bad reaction to one another, sort of like electricity and metal. Another way to ward them off is actually to wear your clothes inside out. Other ways are 4-leaf clovers and hanging a horseshoe above the doorway. Since fairies and fae are a blanket term, evil fairies like trolls, redcaps, and pixies are the ones that you have to watch out for the most. These are ones that have more malicious intents. And with all the different ways to ward off fairies, you can actually end up warding off good ones as well. More often than not, good fairies help with household chores and even protect the home. While trolls don't really bother people all that often, they do, however, help changelings abduct children. And redcaps, who are definitely the nastiest out of the three I labeled, actually intend on killing people, because apparently they've got little knives for fingers. Isn't that just charming? Little frickers. But in my opinion, pixies are definitely the worst. Out of all the fae, there are definitely the biggest tricksters out there. Though the problem is they're so ignorant, they often end up hurting and even killing people with their little tricks and jokes. Luckily, they don't really go into populated human areas all that often, but when they do, it causes a lot of problems. With all the different ways to actually protect your house against these creatures, a lot of times you can accidentally protect it from good fairies as well. It's actually really helpful if you give a kid a pair of scissors before bed. That helps keep trolls away, as well as protection from things other than the supernatural. And again, a lucky horseshoe definitely helps, especially if it's made out of iron. Though preferably, you might want to make sure it's pure iron. Iron mixed with other metals can work, but it won't always be all that potent. You can also use really strong herbs and blueberry reefs, as well as ivy and rowan. And a really strong plant protection is an herb known as boxwood. If you put all that stuff around your house, you shouldn't have any problems to keep away any type of fairy. And when traveling, I definitely suggest that you carry around a wooden nail in your pocket, or a 4-leaf clover. The types of fairies that you don't really have to worry about are literal fairies and little creatures known as brownies. Brownies are really tidy little creatures and really love shiny things too. If you give them a small offering of a shiny thing, they'll help you keep your house clean. And then there are also elves who are really good at building things. As you may have heard from that one story where elves help out a shoemaker. Though nowadays, elves don't really come to our realm, and prefer to stay in the fairy world where it seems to be a lot safer. So with all that said, both the good, the bad, and the flat-out tricksterous, fairies are definitely creatures you want to be wary of. And I suppose it's up to you to decide whether or not you want them in your house. And the better the relationship you have with your house fairies, I suppose the easier things will be. Did you guys enjoy the video? If you liked it, give that like button a boop, subscribe if you want more content, and make sure to hit that bell button. And if you guys want to request a monster, or have a suggestion on what else I can do on my channel, leave a comment down below. I would love to read it. So anyways, in light of the fact that spring is finally here and things are warming up, the first creatures that came to mind were fairies and the fae. And while a lot of people disagree that they should be in the monster category, I'm still counting them because they do cause a lot of trouble. And on top of that, I had to record the whole information bit all over again because something happened. And I suspect that a fairy did it. I wish I was joking. But overall, I definitely give them a 10 out of 10 with creatures that were fun to research, and a 5 out of 10 with creatures that I probably wouldn't want to meet. And now for the question of the day. One user asked, what do you do when you have a really bad art block and inspiration just won't come to you? Isn't it frustrating? And what I do when I have art block is that I try to relax. Sometimes being stressed out can really make it hard to actually draw anything. So I usually try to go for a long walk if I haven't drawn anything for a few days. I also like listening to music because that can often spark inspiration too. But I also like taking long hot baths with music playing in the background. That way I can relax and let my mind rest for a little bit. This is honestly hard to remember sometimes, but it does work, at least for me. So I hope that helps for any artist who's having a bad art block. And with all that being said, watch out for the monsters under your bed, and I'll see all you jelly beans in the next video. Bye!